Ladies and gentlemen, Kenneth Drucker.
Well, I'm glad to be here. We've been working on Penn Station since 1992. That's 2 decades that it's taken to get to this point. And there have been 5 electoral cycles during that period that we've been working on the project. I wanted to just briefly show a few examples of what else is happening elsewhere in the United States. Once I get the prompt for the PowerPoint show. The high-speed rail system is actually progressing in the United States, and there are many other projects with strong leadership, such as Union Station in Washington, D.C. We've been working on developing a strategy with a public-private partnership and with developers to promote the redevelopment of Union Station. It is possible to develop historic stations and to create incredible opportunities for redevelopment. The key to this is developing additional square footage for the developers. In this case, with Acreage Development, we're developing 3 million square feet with Shalom Baronis of mixed use, which is represented by the blue, and developing a platform onto which we're creating about 6 million square feet of new mass transit that's intermodal for high-speed rail and for the metro system. The key, like with the Antwerp station, is to develop a multi-level train station here at Union Station that deals with high-speed rail, deals with through train service, and deals with the opportunity to connect to the community. This particular project is actually funded in the first stage. It's a 20 to 30-year program. And the idea is to create a residential community around the platform, which is similar to the work that's being done at Hudson Yards. If you look at the work that's being done in China and the rest of Asia, the notion is to create incredibly dynamic spaces. In this case, we're doing a sustainable green roof and ribbons that represent the high-speed rail service moving through the nation's capital. Another strong leader in having to do with high-speed rail is the mayor of Anaheim, California. There was a design competition many years ago where the mayor wanted to create an iconic building. We looked at some of the blimp hangars and some of the opportunities to create large-scale structures that you find both around San Francisco and around the areas in Southern California near Irvine. This iconic building is essentially a very transparent building that becomes a whole new node for Anaheim itself. The project is funded and under construction, and it creates a new opportunity for intermodal connections between high-speed rail, part of the Phase 2 California high-speed rail system, and it creates an innovative structural enclosure system and a new iconic identity for the county of Orange County and for Anaheim itself. With train stations, the key is to create commuter retail, and you can see on the left-hand side of this slide, essentially all the retail is nested within this ETFE, very light dynamic structure. I wanted to go through some of our studies that we've done over the course of the last decade with different developers, with the city. And the first study that I wanted to show you, which is setting up the panel discussion, is how one can fit Madison Square Garden into the western half of the Farley office building. We did this study back in 2004 for the developers who were ultimately selected for the project. And the key here is how do you fit an arena, once MSG is gone, into a historic structure if it ends up on the western half of Farley, or if it ends up in the yellow object that we've delineated here, which is the Morgan Postal Facility. The key is MSG wants to be close to the transportation hub of the existing Penn Station. To fit the seating bowl into the existing western half of the building, it's important that we actually stay below the height of the parapets of the existing cornice of the Farley office building. You can see to fit the seating bowl, there's also an encroachment into the donut, as we call it, in the train hall that makes up the train hall for Farley. So the building does fit. We think we can get the State Historic Preservation Office to agree to this kind of insertion into the western half. And because it fits on this site, we also believe that it can fit on the Morgan site. The key in making the arena efficient is actually to deal with the operational costs of moving MSG. The unions actually have to move everything up to the stage level. So the key is you want to be able to drive trucks onto the floor of the new MSG. In this case, we've illustrated how if you build over the western half, you can actually build on top of the trains above the catenary and still get trucks to the floor of MSG. A similar section would exist if we did this in the Morgan building, but you wouldn't have to deal with the tracks. You just have to deal with getting the post office out of the Morgan building, which could take some time. In 2005, with Jamie Carpenter, we did studies on how to create an iconic train hall and how to connect the 32nd Street corridor to the future Hudson Yards development. The key here has to do with getting the tax credits that are required to reduce the overall cost of the project. Back in 1994, we had developed a train hall which was a $600 million solution. In 1996, Congress cut the funds when the Congress went Republican, and the project died in 1996. So in this solution, what we were trying to do was to connect link down 32nd Street with a variety of uses. Here, the arena is actually removed. The key is we want to connect the 32nd Street east-west axis through the Brookfield site and through the Hudson Yards site. The key, once MSG is removed, is to deal with the transfer of development rights. This is 10 million square feet of an opportunity to take the area that could be built on top of Farley, to be built on top of MSG once MSG is removed, and look for new sites for development of office and residential uses, office in blue and residential in yellow. We were asked by Amtrak to take a look at what would happen if we repurposed the service building, which is the little white dot that you see on the screen. This is the only part of the original Penn Station that remains. And it's made of the same granite that the original Penn Station was made of. So if you build 10 million square feet, there's an opportunity to actually build a new cogen plant that could supply all the energy for the 10 million square feet of new construction and provide for service for a new Penn Station. So this was a study that we also did with the developers. It's on block 780, which is part of the Gateway project, just one block south of the existing Penn Station site. For the mayor's office, we also took a look at what happened if you begin to carve away, if MSG remained, into the bottom of MSG. And so here what we were trying to do is to clean up all the circulation. There was an article in the Times a few weeks ago about how we could at least improve what's there until MSG is gone. So we did lots of studies on how to improve the circulation between NJT, Long Island Railroad, and Amtrak, and to create some sort of iconic element that unified the street wall and provided for an opportunity for transparency and daylight to get down to the existing tracks. Working with the Port Authority and with Moynihan Station Redevelopment Corporation, we were also asked to look at how we could do a more economical train hall. And so some of the principles that we had developed with the earlier design, we simplified, dealt with issues and scale comparisons between 30th Street Station, Union Station, and ultimately Grand Central Station. We developed a very cost-effective glass enclosure system within the existing donut or train hall. The issue here is that there are 3 trusses that sit within this existing space, and those trusses have to be removed. And there's an issue about whether or not the trusses and the removal of those trusses would impact the historic tax credits. So in summation, I think that there are 2 sites for the relocation of MSG. There's the tougher fit on the western half of the Farley building. There's probably a more comfortable fit for the Morgan Annex. If we're to convince MSG to move, I think it's really important that we be able to say that the connections to the trains and to the existing infrastructure remain as close and proximate to the new MSG as possible. So ultimately, we all know we need a new gateway. We all know that we need a new iconic element. We all need a new sense of arrival for New York City. The first thing that has to happen is the removal of MSG. During the entire time, what's really important is that there be strong leadership between the city, the state, and all of the different train operators that operate the station. Thank you very much.
Personally, in a way, I wouldn't mind the fact that the old Penn Station was demolished if they had built something decent in its place. Penn Station doesn't really work very well as a train station.
You're just immediately leaving all of the vibrancy and life of New York City and just descending into this pit. It's too crowded. There's no logical way to understand how you move through it. It's a maze that makes no sense. The separation of Long Island Railroad from New Jersey Transit to Amtrak is completely confusing, and it's just a terrible, terrible place to be.
It's pretty much like a fancy hospital, you know, like a fancy vagrant hospital. It's dirty, it's disgusting, everyone's miserable, no one's ever happy.
I think people just want to get out of Penn Station as quick as possible. It's a little, with the low ceilings and stuff, it can sort of heighten your sense of stress when you first get to it.
Why can't it be as nice as Grand Central? Has nicer shops, it's cleaner, better atmosphere. So yeah, I hate coming here.
It's a bit depressing compared to certainly Grand Central and a lot of the other places in New York. It's not New York's best.